honored and thrilled to be here. We have quite a lofty topic and some incredible speakers here today. So with that, I'd love to just dive in so that we can make the most of the time and sharing. First and foremost, by way of introduction, I'd like for us to go through the panelists here, starting with Kimberly, and talk about first introducing yourselves. And can you share a bit about your background and the experiences that have shaped your understanding of cultural awareness and global competency?
Yes, hello, good morning, everyone. I want to thank the HEaL Conference for all of this. My name is Kimberly Green, and I am the founder and CEO of Golden Consecutive Consulting. And the area of focus for me is healthcare and education, and bringing the two together, not as dichotomic worlds, but worlds that really need to come together in how we impact population health over a community. So therefore, with education and healthcare and data and operations, we can really do more to heal one community at a time.
Do I really have to follow her? Oh my gosh, girl. Okay. Hi, everybody. Good morning. I'm super psyched to be here. I'm Lexis Surratt. I am a mother of 4 and the founder and CEO of Little Wins. It is an online marketplace to facilitate the trade to buy, sell used medical equipment and also supplies. But it, moreover, is to bring people together, find a solution for the lack of equipment and access to it, and enable people to thrive in their daily lives. And it's an honor to be able to do that.
Thank you. Sanjay.
Great. Morning, everyone. My name is Sanjay. I'm VP of Supply Chain for Embed Biosciences. It's a company for wound healing treatments. I have about 20 plus year experiences in the diverse industries, 10 years plus experience in the global logistics and transportations, and then about 10 years plus experience in the healthcare industry. Throughout my work in these different industries, one thing which I found very important is people. People are connected, people work together, things move fast, things move easily. If people are not connected, then we get very big challenges. And I had observed this from very big companies where I worked to even a small size company where I'm currently working. Happy to share my experiences here. Thank you.
Well, good morning, and I also want to thank HEaL for the opportunity to be here to speak. My name is Danut Debney Shaw. I'm a decision strategist, attorney, federal practice counsel, and author. The areas that I work in are developing different types of decision making and also vision focused on ultimate resilience. My company is Silafantis. The way all of this began for me is that I came from a family that is very much multicultural. My mother was in a Siberian labor camp. My dad was in a German labor camp. They came from Eastern and Middle Europe, so I had a lot of acclimatization very early on with issues of culture and conflict, and had an opportunity to see how others, rather than just Americans, were able to interact and engage. My family belonged to a lot of different organizations, so I had a lot of experience very early on. I was in America when I went to school, and I was in Europe when I came home. And I know that many other people have also had this kind of an experience themselves. When I got involved with work, I did international negotiations for an airline, and I had to work with nationals on their own turf and territory. I also belonged to the Asian American Chamber of Commerce in Washington, D.C., and other various organizations. So my life has been very much steeped in that. And what I have found and seen is that at a fundamental level, of course, we're all the same. We're all the same. But we have different development of in our private and localized worlds. And if you can pare down the information to the basics and build trust from there, you can elevate the discussion, the dialogue, the interaction, and not only do you build bridges, but you build ladders.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you to everyone for your time and your attention today. My name is Gaynor Whitaker. I've been in the industry, the pharmaceutical industry, for about 25 years plus. And as a clinical research scientist, I heard a lot of talk about big pharma yesterday. And I understand the lack of trust in the community, and that's why I created my company called Genesis Medical Research Group, which is an online learning modules, and I also do face-to-face workshops to engage the community and bridge the gap between the pharmaceutical industry and the community. We recognize that that lack of trust is for several reasons, but also understanding that it's not just a U.S. thing, but it's a global thing. And working in the industry for over 25 years, I've had the opportunity to work in a feasibility space as a feasibility director for large pharma, and had engaged with relationships with people from multiple countries, and built relationships and understanding that you have to build trust to have that high-performing team collaboration. So getting to know people from different countries really helped me open my eyes to understand that you have to really understand and build relationships to make it really work and be effective in clinical research and have the results that you want globally, and looking at the epidemiology data. So I'm really excited to talk about health equity with everyone in the room to ensure that we move the needle forward with the FDA guidance that we are currently mandated to do. So thank you again, and to pass off to you now.
Good morning, everyone. Dr. Rania Miller. I have been in education for a long, long time, and a leader in education. I decided to form my organization, Lead, Develop, Engage, because everybody can't be a leader. Some people are forced into it because they don't like chaos. And others are forced into it because they were so excellent at their current position that now you should be promoted and be the manager. Mm-hmm. However, what we realize is everybody can't lead, everybody cannot develop their team, and everybody cannot get their stakeholders engaged. So that's what I focus on. Cultural competency to me started, I think, when I was in the military, just traveling to different places, seeing how other countries go about their day-to-day, and just coming home, I just realized there's so many opportunities that our children, because I was in classrooms, weren't really having and weren't experiencing. And so I think that we have to really do a better job of preparing our students for interacting globally, not just locally. And as adults also, because I've just recently learned that people don't even take vacations. So we have to definitely do a great job of expanding people's global competencies. That's it.
Fantastic. What a wealth of experienced professionals and expertise we have with us today. It's truly impressive. I'm going to start with Sanjay and direct a question your way. What are some common challenges individuals or organizations face when trying to embrace cultural diversity and global competency?
Yeah, thank you. And I think this is a very important question. Before I answer this question, I just want to explain what the cultural awareness is. In very simple terms, the cultural awareness is, sorry, let me just put this. Yeah. So in very simple terms, the cultural awareness is simply self-awareness of yourself as well as the awareness of the people around you. Now, when you see the people around you, they might be coming from the diverse backgrounds, and that's where the challenge is around the cultural awareness. Going deep into the point of cultural awareness, there are two aspects which I also feel are important. One are the visible aspects. Visible aspects are very simple, the people, their dress, their ethnicity, the country they belong to. They are simple visible aspects. But invisible aspects, such as the core values of the people, the beliefs in them, and that drives a lot of behaviors. So if we understand this aspect of cultural awareness, then we can understand what are the challenges and opportunities around it. So few of the challenges which I had seen personally are the personal bias. So when you are interacting in a diverse organization, there's always a personal bias, and it can be sometimes mental bias, internal. It may not be right, but there is no correct right or wrong answer around it. It's again a behavior which is coming out from the core belief and values aspect. The second aspect which I can say is the bigger challenge is the communication, because each culture have their own way to communicate. And again, there's no right or wrong answer around what is the right communication style. It depends, in different countries. It depends in the different regions of the world. It depends also the verbal or invverbal cues during the communication. And it's very important to understand the communications, very, very important to understand the aspects of the communication. Let me give you an example. I was in Japan, and I was in a shopping center, and I was trying to get a t-shirt, very simple t-shirt, not more than $8. I was looking at my pocket, looking at my card, and looking around, and the people over in the shopping mall are really want to ask and understand, are you facing any problem, to understand the pricing or trying to convert the pricing and all. But the lady is all the time bowing her head, all the time. Even if she speaks one sentence, she will bow her head down. So that's the culture. And sometimes other person may get annoyed why she's doing all the time. Means even one answer and she's bowing her head. But later on I understood very well that it's a culture. And then you have to respect the culture, and sometimes answer appropriately. So that's what I see. Definitely the bigger companies have DEI and all those bigger kind of a social elements into their organization. But I feel like again personal bias, communication are one of the key challenges.
Thank you. Fantastic. Moving along to education and training, and certainly everyone can respond, but I'm interested, Dr. Miller, Kimberly, Lexus, what role does education and training play in promoting cultural awareness and global competency, both in academic settings and the workplace?
Well, I can start. For me, I sit on the board of a public charter school, the largest public charter school in North Carolina, KIPP, North Carolina, under the KIPP Foundation. Mm-hmm. And we mostly serve black and brown, and we have different types of diversity. When it comes to the classrooms and the teachers and the environment and the staff, diversity and cultural awareness is very, very important, because that impacts how a student learns. So there could be different things. For example, we might have a student from, let's just say South America, right? Just because they're Latin descent, for example, it's important for teachers to understand, like, hey, why is this particular student having, well, what they might think is truancy on a particular day or a particular month, but kind of segueing from Sanjay Gupta is that cultural lens. So roles in our organizations, such as our DEI experts, because in training and bringing that cultural awareness, for example, instead of the teacher or the staff assuming, it's better to ask the questions and call them in. And that's what training does. It opens you up to ask the question, because maybe just because the student is Latin, maybe he could be of another religion. Maybe he could be Jewish. Maybe he could be respecting Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur or Ramadan or whatever their family or their culture. So For example, you can't just say, oh, there's some truancy here, or, you know, we have attrition here, or this or that. You have to ask the question. And same way in healthcare, you have processes. For example, you have patients and you have doctors and nurses, and the way they treat someone through a cultural lens makes all the difference in their care. So at the end of the day, it's about the customer experience. So I think that cultural awareness and treating people through a cultural lens comes through training, but also comes through being open. And instead of assuming, ask the questions.
So I would like to add to that. Thank you,
Please.
Kimberly. I'm working in clinical research, and I'm very passionate about it. And I do believe in the work that we do, and a lot of us in the pharmaceutical industry are really champions, not just because it's a big business. We look at it as medication that are saving the lives of people, because initially I struggled with it. But we created these modules because we saw that there was a lack in competency and cultural awareness. And if many of you are not aware that there is a lack of representation of different patient populations in clinical trials. For example, like African Americans may only represent about 3 to 8% of clinical trials, and most of the drugs that are taken for like hypertension may disproportionately be taken by African Americans. So we are not, you know, for example, understanding if this drug is really effective because our mortality rate is higher. So looking at these cultural competencies is why aren't African Americans participating in clinical trials? Why aren't minorities participating in clinical trials? And we understand that that's a lack of trust. But getting down to the root to that, why don't we trust? We know that there's a historical factor why we don't trust. We're about to touch on Henrietta Lacks. I don't want you to jump out your seat yet in Tuskegee, but we created these courses so that people could understand that's part of it, the trust factor, but health educators, healthcare professionals, there's a root that there's some fundamental things that you need to understand as a clinical research professional about the unethical conduct that has happened and why people don't trust clinical research. This is cultural competency, not just in the U.S., but globally, why people don't trust. And most people don't even know it. Most people who work in the healthcare profession, this may have been an elective, but it should be the fundamentals to why we do clinical research, why you have apprehension from patients wanting to take a drug, or why they're not consistent. So cultural competency is critical, and that's why Genesis, the company that we created, is based on the foundation of clinical research. You have to know this before you can even see a patient. So we train clinical first of all, we start at the pharmaceutical company. We work with clinical trial sites, because if you think about those who conduct clinical trials, they're on the front lines speaking with patients and should understand why patients don't want to do trials and how to be effective with communicating with people with diverse backgrounds. Because you wouldn't talk to even an African American in the North the way you would talk to one in the South, or a Latinx patient. You know, is a difference between the West Coast and maybe in Florida. So understanding those differences, we have to have a cultural humility, because sometimes being academic and being so bright, you think you might already know the answers, or I know diverse patients, or I got this. And if we knew it, we wouldn't have this problem with disproportionate patients participating in clinical trials, or have the disparities that we have. So it's on a global level. So I think it's important.
I also love that you're addressing all the stakeholders, right? And I think that's something that's often missed is, oh, just this portion of the staff has to understand this, but you're talking about every.
Bridging the gap.
I love that. That's
Bridging the
fantastic.
gap.
Yes. I don't know if Alexis or Dr. Miller, before we move on, but yeah.
I would
please.
love to add on to all of these things. Just for me personally, I want to tell you a really quick story. When I was in school, they always told me that I was terrible at math. I was failing all the time. And it started to do something to me, right? Like, I was in AP English and AP History, but what's wrong with me? I can't compute. And it wasn't until the only year I got to go to college that my professor told me, hey, so actually you're just a little numerically dyslexic. And if you are aware of that, you are actually really good at math. But think about growing up in school. I have a daughter in a wheelchair. I have a son with like sensory thingies. And we all have something. And I think what I loved, Kimberly, what you said about ask the questions. As in education, I think that support is really important. In order to have support, you have to ask the questions and be willing to get the answers and to understand that everyone is different and we learn differently. We love to say that in classrooms, right? Like there's these different ways that everyone learns, but we're not teaching you in the way that, in the format all the time in which you learn. And I think that it's not just about understanding that, but there has been a lot of trouble just with my baby girl in her wheelchair with like schools with no elevators, no fire exit strategy. I'm working with one right now on it. Just awareness in general. We have to look at each other and actually see each other, listen to each other and actually hear each other. Because everybody has, like you said, the core fundamentals no matter what. And we all feel the same things on a basic level. But we have the ability and access to so much more than we ever have before. We're just not really tying it together. We're not communicating. And that, I think, is really important.
I think it's beautifully well stated, and I think everyone can agree and sink hands on that this is something we want to work towards, and we can all nod our heads and say this is something worthy pursuit. Changing gears slightly, how do we talk about cultural sensitivity versus cultural appropriation, right? And so the question then is, how do we distinguish between cultural sensitivity and cultural appropriation, and what are some best practices for respectively engaging with those nuances? Jump to the crowd. Look at that.
I'll just say, like with appropriation, is just really not acknowledging and giving the respect to that group of individuals that carry that belief or that tradition and taking it as your own and benefiting from. I think you have to approach that culture with sensitivity and gain that I would say acceptance of it in some way, because there's just certain things that I just can't take from another culture and not expect that there's going to be some backlash. I need to respect them enough to ask the question, is this acceptable? See, the root, a lot of it is just the lack of humility in us as individuals thinking we know everything. Like you said, the root, we need to ask questions. And asking, is this acceptable to wear this feather or to wear this garb or we have to be sensitive to that and not assume, and we have to always understand that we don't have all the answers. So we need to reach out to those cultures and ask those questions, because we can offend. Just like at my job, very nice people will touch my hair, and anybody in this room, any black women in this room, what will happen if you touch my hair? What will you say? Don't touch my hair. Or, and it's like, well, your hair's not going to break. But that's something that even if we like you, don't touch my hair.
And it's a culture thing.
It's a culture thing.
I don't want you
and
to
it has
touch
be
my hair
respected.
either. Like, you know what I mean?
I was thinking the same thing.
Like, don't touch me, right? But unless you're invited. But no, I think that's an everybody thing. I love what you just said. Like asking and the humility about it, saying like, I don't want to offend, but the other person has to also understand that maybe it's just that simple. You just have to say, look, I'm not trying to offend you. I just want to do the right thing, and be humble and gracious. Like give each other Grace, like that.
I just wanted to kind of tag on to what's already been said, that we do not historically here in this country come from a place where we do much with awareness. We kind of, for decades, have just been trotting along. Yes, people have been offended by this or that, or marginalized in a variety of ways, and we've just kind of just kept the ball rolling. It's only in these recent times that a lot of this has been pointed out. That's the other part of it. And I think it's very important, this subjectivity that is being raised, this notion that if we're going to understand something from outside of ourselves, it's really very helpful to understand from within ourselves, because sometimes we don't really know where it is we sit till something rubs us up the wrong way. And then we sit in here going, well, why was I so upset about that? And what did that mean? And what is that representative of? And what does that point to? And so, and we do a lot of reacting rather than responding. And you know, reacting is great if you need to get out of the way of a bus or an oncoming train. Reaction is great. But you've heard this. You've heard companies, you've heard countries say they reacted very, very quickly, swiftly reacted to this, that. And what happens right after? There is an adjustment that needs to be made because much was not taken into account, whether that's cultural, whether that's political, whatever that aspect is. So awareness and bringing things to consciousness. I know that sounds kind of like, oh, God, consciousness. Yes, you have to know where you're at and where you want to go before you can figure out what you can do with someone else.
I'd like to.
Oh, sorry, please continue.
I was just going to say, I've gotten to know Dr. Miller thanks to HEaL Conference and bringing us together and networking, and I think what she does is really fascinating. So when I think of sensitivity, I think of feelings, and then when I think of appropriations, I think of actions and behavior. I like to hear Dr. Miller down there. How does it apply to you and your organization and how you've experienced that?
I think that the appropriation is correct. I think that as individuals, we have a sense of entitlement to what other people's cultures have. And I'm going to give you my own personal example. I love abatas. I think that's the right word. Anybody know if that's the right word? No? Okay. The dress wear that the ladies wear in the Emiratis, where it covers their whole entire bodies, I like that because as a pre-K teacher, I would be able to sit on the carpet and I didn't have to worry about how I was sitting on the carpet, and it's very comfortable and it's loose fitting. But I don't just wear them because I am not Muslim. That is not my culture. Even though I love them, I look at them on Amazon, I put them in my shopping cart, but I don't wear them because inside of me it says, this is not your culture, this is not your religion, so you can't just wear these out and about because you like the way they look. So I buy other things instead. But I think that we all have biases, as Sanjay, did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, as he stated, we have biases, and this goes back to also that education piece that you asked about. We have biases, and we do a training for DEI. We have biases. You have to recognize that you have biases. You know, in education, it could be different. In healthcare, it's different. It's every tech, it's different.
Right.
As an educator, if I walk in your room and it's dirty, I have a bias. I don't want to be in your classroom to support you. But you might need my support, right? So we have to be aware of what those biases are. We have to be aware of what other people's cultures may or may not be if you're going to be dealing with them. And then you have to not take it upon yourself to just touch people's hair, wear their clothing, take their language also, words that people say. Just because you hang out with people doesn't mean that you can say what they say. So I think we all have to stop being entitled to just take what we want. I know this is a capitalist society and we don't want to hear that.
Point that out.
But we have to stop taking what we want, and we do have to ask the question.
Just really quickly, I like what she said, that we have unconscious bias. We're sitting here thinking, oh, well, black women, no, you don't touch their hair. Lexus just said, I don't want people to touch my hair either.
Right.
Touch my hair either.
But did we ask her? You see, so I just realized I had an unconscious bias because she spoke up and said something, and now I've learned something.
Yep.
and I appreciate
Now
that.
you can touch my hair. Because the understanding, right? Look what just
Well,
happened.
that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Moving along here. Technology and globalization. Sanjay, I'll start with you, but certainly we have a wealth of expertise here. How has technology and globalization impacted cultural awareness and interactions on a global scale? What are the positive and negatives?
Well, let me touch first globalization. I've been into the 2 or 3 big global companies, travel all around the world, almost all the continents, and met with so many different people. And we know that the world which we live in is truly globalized. The products which we use on day-to-day basis are not built in one place. They're built in so many different places, so many different countries. They are interconnected supply chains. And probably you had heard a lot about supply chain during the COVID period. What happened? Means things started, the flow of the things started, slowing down, and at one time stopped. The product started slowing down. The ships started, piling up in the one part of the world, and then the people stopped moving. So the globalization is all around, and the aspect of cultural awareness is very important in globalization. When a company tries to move into one part or other part of the world, they need to understand what the local culture is. They can't put their country culture or their people culture and force them onto the culture of other countries. They want to sell the products, that's good, but doesn't mean that force the cultures. They have to respect the cultures and then understand that how the products can be adjusted and finally sold into those countries. There will be always challenges, no doubt. There will be always challenges of overall people, employment, trust, and globalization, and then coming back to nationalism. All challenges will be there. But we are interconnected today. Means we can't say that a country can live in isolation and people can sustain in isolation.
I just wanted to jump in very quickly
Yeah.
in tandem with that, because it's a very interesting dynamic. While we really want to respect and hold on to cultures and to our individual identities, this is going to be a very interesting push-pull, and I don't think there is one answer to it, as the issue has been raised. As we continue forward, how do we maintain those cultural identities, which of necessity require certain boundaries, some boundary at least, right? Because then you can't have no boundaries, you don't have a cultural identity. And how, on the other hand, do we unify ourselves? Because it's true, we're tied by technology, we're tied by economics, we're tied by so much. And to be isolationist, as was just pointed out, doesn't seem like it's rationally reasonable to even think toward the future. So these are just questions for all of us to ask ourselves, to think about, to discuss with others, because this is how we'll have to march forward. We have to do all of this together.
Yeah, Danute, I'm wondering if you and panel would expand on that as we kind of move into our next question or topic here. How do current events and global trends influence our understanding of cultural awareness and global competency? How can we adapt to those cultural dynamics? And of course, it's not do current events impact, it's how do they? Because we can certainly...
Well, yes, it's interesting how they do. And as we all know, social media and the internet. How else do most people get most of their information? Yes, people still do watch television. They do still read papers. But a lot of this stuff is you pick this phone up and, oh, look, this is what's happening here and this is what's happening there. It's fascinating because of the biases that have been raised. We can all acknowledge that there are inherent biases, whether we have personal biases, we have cultural biases, we have certain biases in businesses on one hand. that bias affects how we receive the news. It affects how the news is put out. I did once upon a time work for a news organization, and at that point in time, they were focused on visuals. They wanted a very visual story. So if there were no visuals to the story, they didn't really want to put it forward. Now, of course, that's probably not the criteria, but this is the experience I had way back then, and it was all oriented toward that perspective. So it's interesting the impact that this will have on us. It's going to require more discernment on our part, more discernment, not judgment, because it's easy to react in judgment. Go, oh, look at what they're doing here. They're doing this, they're doing that. Sometimes it's important to step back a little and take a look at it and really discern. And take a look at yourself and why you're responding the way you are or reacting the way you are. So I think that is part of the issue as we go forward in our society globally.
Alexis, did you have anything to add or down there before we've got, just watching our time and we've got a couple more to go, so please.
I just was going to mention, working for a global organization, we have representation from each country.
Excellent.
And it's important that you have people within that country give you the feedback. You build relationships with those people so that you can collaborate and be able to understand, because I can't just go directly into a place, into a country, without someone opening the door for me. That's even in the U.S. When we're trying to engage with the community. I just don't walk into the community and expect. You have to have some one who represents that, who can open a door and enlighten you on the culture. Like my role in clinical research has been feasibility, where I said I talk to someone in each country, a country head, and they have a whole staff. So they collect the data based on a survey, right? So you want to know about the regulatory challenges, what's
Sure.
unethical in that country. So if you look at that from a broader perspective, you can think about, well, what are the challenges that country has? Not even just from a clinical research perspective, but from a human perspective, is using that same model to be able to reach people and think about how can I engage from a human perspective and a humility perspective. You can't just go in, and I'm very cautious with social media and anything I see on TV, because I know what I see that reflects my culture is not true. So, so I'm very, hesitant to believe a lot of things. I if I do see it, I say that's a portion, but that doesn't reflect all. So we have to be mindful of thinking about partnership and understanding that you have to go to the community and get the door open for you with some humility. I'm just going to keep saying humility because that's what you walk away with cultural awareness, is understanding I don't know.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
what you start
I
out
appreciate
with.
the humility portion, particularly as we are all higher level, but for someone at the level to say, lead with humility, right? And we tend to look at those who have risen through the ranks as they know it all. There's infallible, but there's a different representation here. Alexis, you were going to say something?
I would love
Yeah.
to add on to that. Yeah, thank you. That's amazing, because you say global, and I'm like on the verge of mental collapse, right? That it's so big to think of it that way, and all the different cultures, all the many differences, right? I always want everyone to, when you say humility, think about what, no matter what language, no matter what culture or what you wear, there are only so many emotions, right? There's life experiences that we all have in common. And so if you feel this way, if you feel sad, if you feel bad, or you're mad about something, we've all been there. And I wish that everyone, instead of just presenting comments and throwing out things, could apply that to our daily life, and every single person that you meet, know that you don't know what they just went through or what they're going through at the very second, and to see each other more that way. I just really think that it's critical that we never stop learning, right? We can't just say, this is the assumption, this is what we know the culture does, and then move forward reprinting that old concept, because everything's always changing and evolving, and we must change and evolve. So it's critical that all people, even when you graduate, you're not the genius anymore, right? If you don't stop trying to learn and acquire more knowledge and information every day, then we are moving forward with old concepts, and we're not improving the situation, in
Well,
my
thank
opinion.
you very much. I've got the 5-minute warning, although I'd love to talk for hours. We've barely scratched the surface here. But I will pose these combination of last two questions to the panel here, and certainly remark on what you'd like to. About how can we measure progress in enhancing cultural awareness and global competency? And then in another closing fashion, what advice would you offer to individuals and organizations looking to enhance their cultural awareness? I think we've talked humility, we've talked a lot of these things, so some of those examples. But as we close here, if we could talk about the measurement of the success of this, and if there's others either today here in the audience or through the live stream that are looking to take this approach, what's the first step?
Well, with 5 minutes left, we can just go down the line, each of us, for
Say
1
one thing.
minute.
Say one thing.
One thing, and we'll hit the mark, because I'm all about data science and measuring, so you definitely hit my area. Measurements, for example, they allow us to quantify a problem, and quantifying that problem allow us to address and then be able to act. So, part of decision-making in education as well as healthcare is looking at the facts and taking those facts versus opinion and moving forward to implementation.
Ooh, yeah. I think, to add on to that, if you manage people, you work with people, get to know them. Why don't just sit down, talk to each one of them. Find out the commonalities, the common denominators. Then you can solve those problems, or you can celebrate the wins. And sit in your products, use them, right? When you want them to be more successful, make sure that you really are hands-on. Getting to know your people and getting to know your product, I think, is important.
Exactly.
Yeah. I just want to add one point. Is more about self-awareness and how you can measure itself. Check maybe on the monthly basis how many different diverse people you connected to, and if it is on the low score, then you know the answer. Thank you.
And just to add to what everyone else has been saying, seeing, listening, and engaging. Seeing, listening, and truly actively engaging. Here's another idea. It isn't always about what we put out there, particularly in our work environments. Sometimes there are concepts and ideas that others have to offer that actually do come from a different culture or come from a different perspective. And remaining open to the consideration and the engagement of this kind of alternative thinking, or maybe not even alternative, but just down a different track or perspective, enriches the whole experience, honors the people working in the environment, and moves everybody forward with a little bit more knowledge.
So with Genesis Medical Research Group, we have a baseline survey. So those who take our training online, that you could do it right now if you went online. You do a baseline survey, and then after you complete the program, you're going to have a final assessment so that we can see where you are, what your thoughts were before you took our course, and understanding what your beliefs and what your biases are. Do you understand systemic racism? Do you understand biases? Have you been biased in the past? So we have a survey so that we can see what that difference is and see what that impact is over time, because it's important for us to be able to quantify, especially in the clinical research profession. You always have to. Now the challenge is with community engagement. When you're dealing with the community, how do you measure that? But I think that's something that people have to understand. That's a long-term investment. You can't just go in one time in the community and think you're making an impact. You have to go back, and you have to keep going back, and they have to see your face. They have to see your commitment. They have to believe in your heart. They have to believe in the mission. They have to feel like they're in a partnership. So everything can't be quantified. So, so you have to look at the big picture and see what is it that you're trying to solve. I'll pass it on because I did. But that's how we quantify.
We love your passion. We're feeling it.
It was so much, I kept thinking, oh, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? Okay, so I think the first suggestion is, as a leader, you need to get feedback, right? So how do you know if you're doing a good job? Get feedback. Ask the employees, ask your stakeholders, ask your clients, get feedback. Sometimes as leaders, we don't like feedback. Step out of your comfort zone, get feedback. That's the best way for you to improve. And the second thing goes back to what Lexus says. You have to form relationships, even with hybrid teams. If you're in Tokyo and they're in America, reach out beyond the meeting space, right? Get to know your team. Talk to them. Find out about them so that when you do come together, it's not a meeting of strangers, but a meeting of team.
Well said. Well, thank you to our panelists, to our audience members here, and to HEAL Conference for this wonderful time and opportunity to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.